Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. Over the years, I've sold a lot of weird trash online. Old laptops, TVS, lawnmowers, and even a couch with a broken leg. However, I will always remember the time I attempted to sell my used car on Craigslist. At the time, I was living alone in a rental home in a peaceful area of Maplewood, Oregon. It was a little, wet suburb where you could leave your porch light off without thinking twice, and not much happened. Early in 2016, that is, I recently purchased a newer. I had my old black Sentra accumulating pine needles in the driveway, along with my silver 2013 Accord. Even if it wasn't visually appealing, it was nonetheless operational. Although I didn't have a lot of money, I had recently gone through a difficult breakup and needed to save as much as I could. Half of the furniture had been removed by my ex, and I was gradually rebuilding. It was more sensible to sell the Sentra rather than trade it in. Craigslist looked to be the greatest place to get a fairly reasonable bargain, and I knew that dealerships would undercut me. Craigslist did not have all of the security warnings and verification techniques that it does today. After posting your item and adding your phone number, you simply waited. I advertised it for $2,500, included 6 photos I took with my phone, wrote a good description, noted the mileage, the condition, the recent oil change, and the new tires. I only received erratic texts for the first few days. I was asked if I would take $900 by one guy. Another promised to visit the following morning, but never did. When I asked if she wanted to schedule a time to view it, one woman really called and appeared interested, but she stopped responding. I wasn't desperate, but it was annoying. I received a brief text on the 5th day. "Do you still own the vehicle?" "Yeah," I said. "Still available." In response, the man said, "I'm intrigued." That was it. No name, no inquiries about condition or mileage, only those 2 words. "Do you want to visit and take a look?" I inquired. "Yes," he replied. I inquired when, but then got no response. It was another tire kicker, I thought. I simply left the post up without giving it any thought. It was nearly a week later. I no longer gave the listing much regard. In an attempt to reduce my losses, I had begun preparing to take the Sentra to a used lot to see what I could get. Then, one Wednesday evening, at approximately 10:15 p.m. phone buzzed while I sat on the couch with the lights down, watching something stupid on Netflix. That same number was the source of the text. However, it wasn't your typical message. I had a photo of my Sentra parked in my driveway, exactly where it was. Here's the problem, though. One of the photos from my listing wasn't this one. I recognized it right away. This photo was taken just today, outside. It was dark. In the background was the light from my porch. Even a damp leaf that hadn't been there before was now attached to the windshield. There was a visitor on my land. I felt sick to my stomach. After a few moments of staring at the picture, I asked, "Are you at my house right now?" The response was practically immediate. "I'm here to examine the vehicle. You're where?" I sat still, with no name or explanation. Initially, I wondered how he discovered my address. It was never listed by me. When I posted, I verified that we had never set up a meeting. I didn't forward it to him. "I didn't give you my address," I typed. "How did you discover me?" No answer. I heard it a few seconds later. The front door was knocked on 3 times, firm, but not frenetic or courteous. In order to avoid being seen from the window next to the door, I slipped across to the hallway. I had a racing heart. I didn't want to answer the door. I wasn't armed, and I didn't even have a bat at the time. I dialed the number. After 2 rings, it refused. The knocking immediately resumed, this time with more volume. After 4 brief thuds, there was silence. I approached the side window gently. I barely opened one of the blinds, but they were all closed. On the front porch, there was a person, male, medium height, stocky build, hoodie pulled up, standing uncomfortably, as if he didn't know, possibly, in his mid to late 30s, what should I do next. He was not using his phone. He wasn't even looking at the automobile, let alone clutching keys. He remained still. I took a step back, being cautious not to make noise. My breathing was labored. I sent another text. This is unacceptable. I never provided my address to you. You must go. No response. Uncertain of what to do, I stood in my kitchen. Should I contact the police? What could I possibly say? An unwelcome Craigslist guy showed up. I assumed he would be gone by the time anyone showed up. Then, swam, there was a tremendous clang of metal outside, a car's engine revved, gravel crunched under the tires, and then there was silence. I didn't move for a full 5 minutes. I then went to peek out the window. The man had left. Slowly, I opened the front door and peered around. When I got to the driveway and looked at the Sentra, I noticed that nothing appeared to be disturbed. The driver's side door has a dent. It's not big, but it's obvious. In the center, as if it had been booted, I reported it to Craigslist the following morning, banned the number, and removed the listing. I didn't bother calling the cops at all. I had nothing to go by, no name, no license plate. That same day, I also placed an internet purchase for a security camera system. I sold the Sentra to a dealership for $1,300 a week later, much less than I had hoped, but it was over, at least. That automobile was not going to be in my driveway any longer. Months went by, life went on. For the most part, I forgot about it. However, a strange incident occurred around a year later. Curious, I was reading a Reddit thread about scary stories on Craigslist, and I was horrified by a comment that was placed. I knew this guy back in Portland who used to remove addresses from pictures, they added. He would look at Craigslist, photos for reflected clues or street signs, then arrive while feigning to have a meeting. He would damage the house or car if no one responded. I found it amusing. I believe he was arrested some time ago. I never answered. I kept thinking about what the person had said, but I didn't want to talk. Photo clues, street signs, and reflections. It was there when I retrieved my old Craigslist photos from my central listing. A tiny reflection of the green street sign across the street could be seen in the corner of the windshield in one of the pictures I had taken. It was sufficient, even though you couldn't read it all. If someone really tried, they could discover it if they combined it with the color of the house, the design of the driveway, and the porch light. Yes, he did. I've sold goods online ever since. Yes, however, I no longer share identifying pictures. No license plates, no landmark backgrounds. I meet in parking lots that are surrounded by cameras. Furthermore, I don't sell anything out of my house. Never again. Some individuals only wish to own a vehicle. There are others who wish to frighten you to death. You will never truly comprehend the desires of such individuals. At the time, I was 19, not a child, but not yet intelligent enough to see that some offers and things are simply too odd to be believed. I was spending the summer at home in Ridgeville, a little, peaceful neighborhood just north of Portland, after completing my first year of college. When I was around 15, my parents divorced. My mother, who was severe in a protective, nervous way, was where I lived most of the time. My dad, meanwhile, was more of a you're old enough to make your own mistakes kind of person. Even though I adore them both, I always felt more at ease in my dad's place. That summer, I was spending a few weeks with him while looking for part-time job to help me save money for a used automobile. The issue was that no one was hiring. Not the neighborhood gas stations, not fast food, not even the seasonal gardening work. I only had about $80, and my desperate situation began to overwhelm my common sense. One evening, I was using my laptop on my knees to browse Craigslist's employment postings when I came across a post under Jobs Domestic. The headline was straightforward: "A housekeeper is required. Good pay for 2 nights in a peaceful house." Already intrigued, I clicked. "I'm looking for someone reliable to stay in my house while I'm away for the weekend," the advert said. "Nothing significant is needed. Just you. No dogs, no housework. We'll give you $400 in cash. Both Friday and Saturday evenings must be available. If you're interested, send an email." A couple of low-resolution pictures were attached. A tiny, 1-story house with a kitchen, living room, and guest room. Nothing concerning. It didn't appear fancy, but it also didn't look shady. It was just ordinary. It wasn't the house, though. That got me. That money was the problem. 2 nights of sitting around someone's house for $400. I immediately sent an email, something brief. "Hello, I'm free on both evenings. Able to remain overnight. Tell me the specifics." 10 minutes later, I received a response. "My name is Stephen," the man said. Stated that he worked in information technology, was in his 40s, and had to travel to Washington due to a family emergency. He inquired if I was still interested and stated I seemed like a good fit. Yes, I was. We exchanged text messages. "Where was the house?" I asked. "It was only 15 minutes from my dad's house in North Hill." I got the address from him, and he said before he went, he would tour me around Friday. I kept it a secret from my folks. My mother would have asked for the man's social security number, phone number, and most likely a urine sample. Even though my dad wouldn't have appreciated it, I knew he wouldn't check if I told him, or was spending a few days staying at a friend's house. Friday finally arrived. I only brought a few clothes and toiletries in my little duffel bag, a book and my phone charger. I followed the location to a more historic area of North Hill, older streetlights, uneven sidewalks, and small streets. Halfway down the block was Stephen's house, which had overgrown shrubs and fading green siding. There appeared to be a warped step on the front porch. I knocked. A second later, the door opened. Stephen appeared to be normal. 40-some with a slim physique, faded polo, khakis, thin spectacles, and a little clumsy smile. He said, "You must be James," and shook my hand. "Come in." The house was empty yet clean. Just the necessities, no artwork, no photographs on the walls, and little furniture. TV, a tiny table, a couch, and a single bookcase filled only with outdated paperbacks and technical manuals. It was unlived in, yet it didn't smell awful. He led me down the hall and said, "This is the guest room. You'll remain here. Use the kitchen, the restroom, everything you want. In about an hour, I'll be heading out." I inquired after noticing there were only 2 bedrooms. "Are you the owner of a basement?" "Yes," he said nonchalantly. "There's laundry downstairs. But you won't have to go down." "All right. Just lock the door at night," he continued, passing me a single house key on a plastic keychain. "That's all. I simply want someone to be here while I'm away, like I mentioned. I feel safer knowing someone is home because I've had several break-ins in the past." I gave a nod. Still, it looked like a nice bargain. He departed at 6:30, said he would return on Sunday afternoon. He drove off in an older Honda Civic with Washington license plates, and I watched from the front windshield. Then I was by myself. The first night went without incident. I watched Netflix, went through my phone, and microwaved some noodles I had brought. Out of boredom, I wandered about the house, looking at the bookcases, the kitchen drawers, and the back door. There were no notes on the refrigerator, no pictures, and no indications that anyone else had lived there. I prepared for bed about 10:30. I washed my teeth, closed the front and back doors, and climbed onto the guest room's strange bed. I heard it at that point, somewhere under the floor, a lone brook. I went cold, one more creak, then two consecutive ones. They moved slowly and methodically, as if they were treading cautiously on wooden stairs. In bed, I sat up, already. My heart was racing. It was simply the house settling. I assured myself, you know how old houses made noise. Then there was a clear sound, not settling wood, but a footfall. The basement is a step away. I picked up my phone and crept to the hallway, where I listened, while holding my breath. Nothing for a time. There was a thud, and then a dragging sound that was unmistakable. I gently closed the door behind me and retreated into the guest room. I had trembling hands. I sent Stephen a text. I believe I heard something from the basement just now, dude. I wanted to make sure, but it might be the pipes or something. After a minute, he responded. Dennis is most likely that person. He remains downstairs. Don't worry. He doesn't talk to anyone. I watched the screen and blinked. Dennis, I answered. A roommate wasn't mentioned by you. He returned it. Apologies. Yes, I did forget. He keeps to himself. Since the basement has its own door, you're not likely to see him at all. That response didn't appeal to me. There was something strange about it. I had no idea what else to do. But why would someone neglect to mention that they had another person living in the house? I kept the lights on in the room and made myself go to sleep. Approximately 2 in the morning, the sound of the doorknob turning roused me. It turned as if someone was trying to open it silently, without rattling or forcing it. I sprang to my feet and exclaimed, "Hey, what the hell?" The knob came to a standstill. The hallway was deserted when I hurried to the door and opened it. With my heart racing, I turned on all the lights and looked around the home. Nothing. I spotted something that made my stomach turn. Even though the basement door was locked, there was no lock on it. I sent Stephen another text. Just now, someone tried to open my door. This is really not acceptable to me. No response. I packed my belongings. I got into my car around 2:30 and headed back to my dad's. I attempted to look up the listing once more the next day in order to show a friend. It had vanished, gone entirely. Stephen's number went directly to voicemail when I tried it. Curiosity and I drove past the house that afternoon with an increasing sense of dread. The front door was slightly open. There was no mail, and there was no car in the driveway. I continued. I stayed inside. I never returned. That $400 was never successful. I didn't care, though. All I wanted was to get out. In retrospect, I don't think that house ever had a Dennis or a Stephen. Perhaps it wasn't even his, whatever was trying to open my door in the middle of the night, or whatever was happening in the basement. It wanted me there by myself. And I haven't used Craigslist since. I never thought that purchasing a desk would turn into one of the most terrifying events of my life. I was 19 years old and starting my sophomore year at Pine Brook State University, a mid-sized university tucked away in northern Michigan's hills. My roommate and buddy, Cassie, and I shared a small dorm room on campus the year before. We became close during that year. We were close enough to agree that we would spend our sophomore year renting a modest off-campus home. It wasn't really elaborate. There were 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small living room with yellowing blinds, and a kitchen that appeared to have not been upgraded since the early 1990s, but we owned it. Only 15 minutes from university, the house was located on a peaceful street. Although the low rent was fantastic, the property came fully without flowers. Not even a dining table, not a desk, not a couch, and no beds. Cassie and I made the decision to gradually collect furniture to moving piece by piece that summer while we were living back home. Craigslist became our go-to because we were low on funds. Many items were given to us for free or extremely low prices, a coffee table that had likely withstood multiple transfers, and an ancient armchair with one shaky leg, a mattress that appeared to be functional but was being thrown trash. A desk was still necessary. I hadn't found anything I liked, but Cassie had discovered one at a yard sale close to her birthplace, about 3 weeks prior to the start of the autumn semester. That changed. The afternoon was a Thursday. I was emailing Cassie about the logistics of moving in while sitting on my bed at my parents' house, half looking through Craigslist. I saw it at that moment, a modern desk made of solid wood, with a little built-in bookcase and a great colour. It was positioned close to a bright window in the picture. It had a warm and welcoming feel to it. $25 is the cost. I clicked on the post. The vendor was identified as Mark T, with only an initial and no last name. Used desk, sturdy, good condition, need gone ASAP, first come, first serve, no email. I sent the number and SMS right away. Hi, is the desk still available? I received a response a few minutes later. Yes, I replied. Can you come tomorrow between 6 o'clock and 9:00 p.m? Then the messages became strange. What's your name? What is your age? You desire this desk, but why? I recall looking at my phone in confusion. Cassie was skeptical as soon as I showed her the messages. In order to sell you a desk, why would a guy need to know your age? She inquired. That's dubious. However, I dismissed it. I was accustomed to strange folks on the internet. I responded with my initial name, stating that I required it for my college residence hall and that I was 19 years old. He answered right away. It sounds good. Mark Travis is my name. 1127 Holloway Lane. Brookwood is the address. Come by yourself. I'll carry it for you. I was troubled by that last line. Come by yourself. He responded succinctly and definitively. When I wrote back, I'll be bringing a friend. Just FYI. Not necessary. Only you. That didn't sit well with me. Cassie didn't either. However, I persuaded myself that it was only a socially uncomfortable elderly man. In addition, I had my mom's SUV with the seats down for the weekend, and I truly enjoy the desk. I had no trouble fitting the desk. Cassie was worried enough to advise her to hold off. She said, I won't go inside, but I'm not letting you walk in there alone. I concurred. We drove to Brookwood, a little suburb around 25 minutes from our new home, the following evening. It was a quiet, forested neighborhood with towering, unkempt hedges and winding streets. We followed the GPS up a road that curled steeply upward. There were fewer and fewer street lamps, and the houses became farther apart. 1127 nestled amid towering evergreens. Holloway Lane was close to the end of a cul-de-sac. The house was a simple one-story ranch with a lawn that was overgrown, peeling shutters and fading beige siding. In the driveway was a red pickup truck that had rusted. We pulled up to the curb and parked. It was just past 6:30 p.m. and it's already getting dark. I looked across at Cassie. Cassie gave me a crazy look and said, Wait here. I'll text you if I need help moving it, she said. You've got 5 minutes. I nodded, picked up my phone, and proceeded up the walkway to the front door. Then I'm knocking. My feet made a creaking sound on the porch. I knocked. A few seconds went by. The door then opened. The man in the middle, nothing there resembled what I had anticipated. He was slender, with deep-set eyes, scraggly grey hair, and a grey sweatshirt that appeared to have been left unwashed 4 weeks. I could smell the pungent smell of stale beer and cigarettes coming from inside his greasy beard that covered much of his face. He said, You the one here for the desk? Yeah, I said, trying to smile politely. I'm Emily. He gave a languid nod. Come on in. It's downstairs. I paused. Down. Couldn't bring it up? I inquired nonchalantly. He gave a shrug. My back hurts. I assumed that we would carry it up together. I looked over his shoulder. The light in the living room was low. The desk is nowhere to be seen. Instead of turning and walking away at that moment, I went inside. With a gentle click, the door closed behind me. Without saying another word, he moved forward toward a door off the kitchen. I did the same. I saw a narrow flight of stairs leading into total darkness when he opened it, he said. Down here, and began to descend. For a moment, I stood at the top, my instincts yelling at me. Even so, I followed. The basement smelled of mold and old carpet, and as we got to the bottom, my shoes hit concrete. The room was dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, and there were boxes piled in unkempt piles, some of them broken open, to reveal dusty tools and old clothes. There, he said, indicating the far corner. Looks good, I said cautiously. Is it just the desk? Mark didn't respond. He had turned and begun to walk back. I checked, and sure enough, the desk was there, the exact one from the pictures, but it was pushed tightly into the corner facing the wall, and the room from the picture, with the natural light, was definitely not this place. He halted on the steps, and I remained frozen in confusion for a while before hearing a hard, purposeful pounding at the front door. Who's that? I didn't respond when he barked. I told you to come alone. He growled as he swung around, scowled at me, and then turned and rushed up the stairs. I ran after him, and by the time I got to the living room, he was already at the front door, ripping it open, as Cassie stood there. I live with her, she stated resolutely, refusing to back down. Mark loomed forward and said, We're leaving. You were not invited. Cassie remained unflinching. You weren't in our life either. I sprinted by him, took Cassie's arm, and we were off, throughout the lawn. As we raced, he began yelling behind us, his voice breaking into an angry scream. We didn't turn around. Cassie got into the car, locked the doors, and got out. My heart was beating so painfully. I didn't say anything until we were a few streets away. Thank you, I said in a whisper. Cassie glanced at me, terrified eyes wide. I knocked for almost 2 minutes. Nobody responded. I simply felt bad about it. When I got home, I looked on Craigslist. The listing had vanished. I reported the address and the number. I never heard from Mark Travis, or whoever his name was, again. What would have happened if Cassie hadn't knocked on the door is still on my mind. If I had ventured farther into that basement by myself. After that, I never used Craigslist again. I also never received that desk. I've never been one to take significant chances, particularly with money. My mother, who was raising me alone, worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. Furthermore, someone with that kind of upbringing does not have the luxury of being irresponsible. I spent months researching before purchasing my first used automobile because of this. I needed a car to navigate around Redford, a tiny town outside of Cincinnati, where I had recently graduated from college and moved for a job at a nearby clinic. Redford's public transportation wasn't bad, but it wasn't late, and I occasionally had shifts that ended after midnight. I thought it was time, after approximately 6 weeks of stumbling home from the bus stop in the dark, while holding my pepper spray. I required a vehicle. Just a vehicle that would get me from point A to point B, not my ideal vehicle. I couldn't afford to buy something brand new because I didn't have much saved up. I initially explored dealerships, but the least expensive vehicles had problems, and I found salespeople's polished speech to be unsettling. I then began searching Craigslist, although several individuals cautioned me that Craigslist might be dubious. The majority of the advertisements were from ordinary people attempting to sell their cars. I reasoned that I would be all right as long as I was cautious, met in public, and trusted my instincts. After a few weeks, I eventually came across an advertisement that looked intriguing. Honda Accord 1999. Oboe $2,700. Runs fantastic. Got a thorough inspection just now. Cold AC. Clean and dependable. Since I'm moving out of state, I'm selling. Please only text. Simply put, without any errors or bombastic statements. The automobile appeared respectable, and the photos were crisp and current. Within an hour, I received a response from Jeremy when I texted the phone provided. He suggested to meet later that week in the parking lot of an Oakage shopping centre, which is roughly 10 minutes from Redford, and stated that the automobile was still available. We decided on 3 p.m. that Friday. Since I was off, the automobile was already there when I arrived, parked adjacent to a shuttered mattress store in one of the outer places by the lot's edge. The man standing next to it was exactly like the description he had texted me. Approximately 6 feet tall, with dark brown hair, spectacles, a grey sweatshirt, jeans, and a slim, but not emaciated build, possibly in their late 30s. He had a typical appearance. "Hey, you must be Aaron," he stated in a calm manner as he said hello. "Yeah," I said, looking at the vehicle. "Looks just like the pictures. It's been a good car," he replied. After a minute of small conversation, I said, "I just don't need it anymore." I then asked if I might test drive it. He paused. "Actually, I don't let anyone drive it themselves. Very often, liability." I was taken by surprise. "Yes, that is somewhat typical when purchasing a vehicle. You must be familiar with how it drives." He held up a hand and said, "I understand. You can sit in the passenger seat while I drive. I'll show you around and demonstrate its smooth operation. We can continue if you're okay with it." That bothered me and told me not to get too worked up over it. Perhaps he was simply being too careful. He opened the doors. After a brief moment of hesitation, I moved to the passenger side and boarded the aircraft. I still regret the choice I made. I kept looking around as we left the parking lot, attempting to commit landmarks to memory. I recognized Oakage Boulevard as we began our journey along it. It didn't rattle as some older cars do, and it moved smoothly and operated softly. He turned when I inquired about the AC. It on to demonstrate its effectiveness. I tried to sound informal as I inquired, "So, where are we headed?" At the time, it seemed acceptable to say, "Just a loop. I'll take you down toward the river and back." However, 10 minutes later, we hadn't turned around. We were now passing fewer and fewer buildings after passing the supermarkets and gas stations. Trees were beginning to line the road on both sides, and the sidewalks were ended. "Hey," I said, "you can turn around at any time. I feel comfortable with the vehicle." Jeremy remained silent. With one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the gear shift, he maintained his focus on the road. He didn't give me a look. I said, "You hear me?" At last, he mumbled. I remained silent for a bit before responding. "Yeah, just wanted to show you the highway handling." His voice had changed in some way. It was mechanical and clipped. I took my phone out and looked at the signal. 1 bar, followed by none. No signal. "Would you please turn around?" Sharper this time, I asked again. "I have to return soon. Just a minute," he informed me, even while his tone remained calm. I didn't like the edge that was beneath it. My stomach began to turn. Another 5 minutes went by. We went down a tiny street. No houses, no other cars, no street signs. We seemed to be moving farther into the forest, in my opinion. "I have to return," I murmured to Jeremy. He continued to drive without responding. I thought I may shout for assistance if I saw someone, so I reached for the window control. Nothing took place. I gave it another go. "Dead, you turned off the window," I remarked. I noticed that he hadn't said more than a syllable since we had left the parking lot, and I could sense that the stillness was intentional. My heart began to race, and I made an effort to keep my voice steady. "I want to get out, turn the car around." I clenched my phone in my lap. hoping I'd get signal again, but I couldn't leap. He was going at least 40. I couldn't fight him. He was bigger, stronger, and I had nowhere to go. At that moment, I noticed a police cruiser sitting on the side of the road. It appeared to be an empty stretch, but it was real. I hit the window button once more, but nothing happened, so I lifted both hands and began furiously waving before Jeremy snapped. The car veered slightly, wheels thudding over the shoulder, and I wrenched away from him and continued to wave as we passed the cruiser. "What the hell are you doing? Stop that." He reached across the seat and grabbed my wrist, Jeremy swore under his breath and slapped his fist on the steering wheel. I didn't respond. Instead, I simply gazed straight ahead, hoping he wouldn't do something wild. I thought it hadn't worked, but then I turned back and saw the blue lights flash on. The patrol car quickly pulled out, he stopped, and the police car arrived behind. A big, square-jawed officer got out and approached Jeremy. "What's going on?" the guy said, and Jeremy responded too quickly. "Test drive. I told him I wanted to go back 20 minutes ago, but he wouldn't stop. I didn't feel comfortable." She panicked out. "Officer, I don't know what she's doing." The policeman glanced at me. I looked at him and said clearly. Another second went by, and the officer narrowed his eyes at Jeremy and said, "Sir, get out of the car." Jeremy appeared to be about to argue, but he opened the door and got out, and the officer led him to the back. A second officer soon followed, and they talked to Jeremy as I sat there with my hands shaking in my lap, and the second officer approached me. "Are you okay?" "I believe so," I said. "I simply want to return to my vehicle." They got me out of the car and asked me to move aside while they ran Jeremy's information and verified his ID. One of them asked me politely whether I had been touched or hurt in any way, and I replied that I had just been afraid. The officers gave me a ride back to the parking lot where my own car was still. They waited until I got in and drove off safely. They eventually informed me that Jeremy had no warrants or anything they could hold him on. Legally, they said he hadn't kidnapped me, he hadn't locked the doors, he hadn't physically restrained me. They told him to leave and warned him not to call me again. I was so close to something terrible and didn't even recognize it until it was almost too late. I reported the listing to Craigslist, banned Jeremy's number, and deleted the app. I stayed on the couch for a long time when I got home, not crying or screaming, just sitting there in shock. 4 weeks afterward, I would wake up in the middle of the night convinced that I had heard a car pull into the driveway. So I changed my number, stopped telling people where I lived, and began checking my locks twice, and then 3 times. I still don't know what he planned to do, and I don't want to. I know this. I doubt I would be here to share this story if that police car hadn't been parked on the side of the road. I've always been a sucker for a good deal. My mom cleaned houses and my dad worked construction, so we never really went without, but we also didn't have much extra, so finding deals became coupons, thrift stores, discount aisles, you name it. I knew how to work it. Naturally, I leaned heavily on Craigslist to furnish my own apartment last year. I wasn't naive. I knew Craigslist could be dubious, but I always assumed that if I stayed smart, met people in public, never brought cash unless I'd seen the item, and trusted my gut, I'd be fine. And I had taken months of saving, late night shifts, and missing meals to afford even that. My setup was simple, with a mattress on the floor, a small kitchenette, and a used couch, but it was mine. I had recently moved into a new apartment in Dover Heights, a small working-class neighborhood just outside Ridgeport. The building was a little run down, but the rent was cheap, and it was all I could afford. I was proud of myself, honestly. One thing I lacked was a television, and after a long day, sitting in silence on that tattered couch became depressing, so I started looking through Craigslist as usual, and a few days later, I came across what appeared to be the ideal bargain, a 40-inch LG smart TV, barely used, with no scratches or problems, priced at $180. The pictures showed a thin, svelte screen, a clean frame, and a functional menu. I texted the person who put the advertisement, Chris, right away, saying, "Hey, saw your LG TV ad. Still available, Chris." Yep, you're right. It was not so low as to raise suspicions, but it was significantly less than shop prices. Chris, certainly. You may stop over tomorrow night at 9 p.m. if you'd want to see it first. The next day, I ended up working late, and everyone I knew was busy, but I didn't want to lose the deal, so I went alone. I'm in Southridge, 1221 Brighton. Southridge wasn't the best part of Ridgeport, but it wasn't the worst either, so I thought I'd go check it out, maybe with a friend. My own neighborhood wasn't exactly Beverly Hills, so I told myself not to pass judgment, but the farther I drove into Southridge, the more suspicious it appeared. Boarded up storefronts, flickering streetlights, rows of older houses with junk in the yards. I arrived at the address just before 9 p.m. I paused, texted again. It was a tiny one-story house with a broken screen door and flaking paint. The only light was a faint porch bulb. I'm present. Come on, Chris, the front door is open. I chose to overlook what should have been a warning sign. I exited, secured my vehicle, and proceeded up the broken walkway. Before I could even knock, the door creaked open as I arrived. There stood a man, perhaps in his early 30s. He was slender, perhaps 6 feet tall, and wore jeans, a black t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Additionally, his stance seemed strange, as if he were stiff but was feigning it. "Chris," I said. He gave a nod. "You here for the TV?" he asked, moving aside. "Yeah, come in," he responded. I entered a tiny living area with a subtle dampness and cigarette odor. The furniture appeared to have been neglected for years, and the carpet was discolored. A TV sat in the center of the floor, still hooked up. The one from the advertisement wasn't it. It was obviously smaller, perhaps 36 inches, and its LG wasn't mentioned anywhere. Instead, Dynamic was written on a tiny, flimsy-looking label on the front. I was unaware of it. Also, the bezel was thicker. There were some smudges on the screen, and one of the HDMI ports appeared to be broken. Chris closed the door after me. "Is this the television?" Trying to speak in a neutral tone, I asked. He gave another nod. "Yes, it functions well. Have you got the money?" I didn't withdraw the cash. I squatted down instead to look at the TV. My intention was not to be dramatic. I only wanted to confirm, I said slowly. "This doesn't look like the one from the pictures. LG, the advertisement said." He snapped. "It's the same one." I gave him a look. His face had transformed. Clenched mouth, narrowed eyes. "No," I replied. "It isn't." Chris took a step forward. "Yes, it is." "Perhaps you misremembered." "No, I can still clearly recall its appearance." "It's not this." Chris abruptly raised the TV with both hands as if to give it to someone. "To me, it functions. Accept it. A deal is a deal." I took a step back. "I don't believe this. I arrived for an LG. This is garbage." His expression clouded. "You arrived here. The bargain was yours. Avoid wasting my time." I responded, "I'm not wasting anything," and started to head for the door. "You attempted to con me." "I'm going." He trailed me. "He's still holding the TV. Please give me my money." I opened the front door, ignoring him. Chris continued. "Behind me." He walked straight onto the porch. "Where in hell are you going? Do you think you can enter my house and waste my time?" He yelled. I didn't answer. Now my heart was pounding. I sped over the dead yard and down the steps. He was following me as I turned around, but I could hear the door slamming behind me. I started running. After struggling to find my keys, I opened the driver's door and hopped inside. I saw him quickly approaching from behind as I slammed the door. I flipped the key. Fortunately, the car's engine began immediately and put it in drive. I swerved past Chris and floored it, but he managed to get into the roadway just in front of my headlights. I didn't turn around. I spent 10 minutes just breathing in the parking lot once I arrived home. I had trembling hands. The Craigslist ad was still there when I picked it up again. Same LG 42-inch, same pictures. I blocked his number, reported it, and marked it as a scam. But I can still picture that guy with the broken TV chasing me down his yard. I'm aware that going alone could make some people think I'm stupid. Perhaps I was, but I didn't think it would turn out that way. I wasn't. A young person. I was dubious and cautious in my mid-20s. Even so, I came dangerously close to being robbed. That's what sometimes keeps me awake. But what if he was armed? What if I hadn't escaped quickly enough? What if had I argued for longer? These days, if I can avoid it, I only meet in public places, police stations, and parking lots with cameras. And I'm leaving if someone ever invites me back into their home. The risk isn't worth the money. There is no deal. I was raised in a little area on the outskirts of Renfield, a largely peaceful town with brick bungalows, chain-link fences, and sidewalks that were fractured due to tree roots that had pushed upward over many years. Few children lived on my block, and even fewer shared my passion for hockey. I was 14 that summer. I'm too old to be happy playing NHL on my Xbox, and too young to work lawfully. With improvised equipment, shabby, shin pads, a baseball glove, and a wooden stick that was more splinters than blade, I played street hockey virtually every night. I was desperate for actual goalkeeper gear. However, we lacked the funds for such. I then used Craigslist. I reasoned that since I had heard my elder relative get a used skateboard from Craigslist for a low price, I could do the same. I scrolled through sporting goods listings for hours on our old family desktop in the living room. When I spotted a listing that read, goalie set pads, blocker, glove, stick, $50 oboe, my eyes widened. I made the click. The images didn't appear to be stock shots. Real photos of somewhat worn equipment on what appeared to be a garage floor. A boa stick, Von pads, and even a catcher that didn't appear to be chewed up. At first, I was dubious. All of that for $50. I was desperate, but it seemed too wonderful to be true. I texted the advertisement's number. I had a straightforward message. Hello, I would want to purchase the goalkeeper gear. Is it still accessible? The response arrived quickly. Yes, you still have it. Are you a goalie? I replied. Yeah, I'm 14. Just getting into it seriously. I recall feeling that I ought to have misrepresented my age, but at the time, I was really honest. Even then, I had a strange sensation about his response. 14. That's fantastic. Dedication begins from a young age. I'm happy to see that. Although it didn't cause me to have a full-blown panic attack, it did make me think more deeply. He had a different plan, so I asked for his location so I could show my dad or maybe ride my bike there. Where are you? I can take a car and come see you. That way, it's easier. I don't want you riding a bike with that much equipment. He responded right away when I told him I was in Crestwood. Excellent. Are you familiar with Valley Ridge Mall? Yes, I did. My house was 2 blocks distant from it. It looks safe enough. Tomorrow evening, we can get together at the mall parking lot. Say at 8 o'clock. The evenings are cooler. The sun didn't completely set until nearly 9 o'clock, and it was already late July. Yes, I replied. I kept my folks in the dark. That was one of the worst things I've ever done. Looking back, the following evening at approximately 7:50 p.m., I sneaked out the house. I told my mother that I was simply going to see a friend at the park by foot. I just had $20 left over from my birthday, not even the $50. I thought I would be able to calm him down. By that hour, the mall was largely deserted. The lot was dotted with a few cars. The light poles hadn't turned on yet, and the sun was low, creating deep shadows. I told him to meet me at the back of the lot, and I stood there. Audi arrived and left. 807, a single, near but not loud beep reached my ears. About 3 rows distant, I turned to see a white van sitting idle. It is plain, a little rusty along the bottom edges, and has no markings. There was no one inside, but the passenger window was partially down. My phone then buzzed. I'm in the white van. Hello, come on over. The items are in the back with me. With my thumb hovering over the screen, I gazed at the message. Every caution about strangers that my dad had ever yelled at me made its way back into my head. Can you bring it out? I just want to see the stuff before anything else, I replied back. The response arrived. A second later, another text said, nope, it's packed tight. Just come take a quick look. It takes 2 seconds. I swear. And yet another. I take it you're not afraid. My chest constricted. There was a problem. I couldn't tell if it was instinct, his tone, or the hurried communications. I didn't respond. I turned and began to walk quickly after initially backing away slowly. After hearing the van's engine crank, I turned to see it leaving its parking space. Once more, my phone buzzed. Where are you heading? Not at all. No. I took off. With my heart racing, I dashed across the street on the sidewalk. I ran across someone's side yard and cut into an alley behind the post office. I had no desire to return home. How about if they came after me? I forced myself to breathe as quietly as possible as I hid in the shadows between a bush and a shed in a stranger's backyard. Vaulting a low wooden fence, the van went by. Before I saw it, I heard it. The crunch of gravel, followed by the roll of tires. It moved slowly by using 2 now easy silhouettes. There was a new passenger in the passenger seat and the driver. I remained motionless. I didn't look at my phone when it vibrated in my pocket. They eventually vanished around the corner at the end of the block. I remained hidden for 10 more minutes before running home in the other direction. My folks were still watching television in the living room when I stormed through the front door. When my mother saw my face, she jumped. She sprang to her feet and exclaimed, Jesus, what happened? I was unable to even utter the words. I was pushed into a van by a guy. They turned over. My dad, understandably, wanted everything. Screenshots, the number, the listing, but the advertisement had already been removed. All I had were the texts. They made a police call. There wasn't much information in the reports that the officer that came out took, just a white van and a young child who became frightened. No faces, no license plate numbers, no verified crime. I had trouble sleeping that night. To 13 a.m. I continued to spin and toss. To grab some water, I got up. As I looked out the curtain of the front window as I went by, across the street, a white van was parked. Headlights off and the engine running. I ducked. I waited, gasping for air. A few seconds later, I peeked once more. The van drew away. Lost. I didn't see it again. I also never made another Craigslist purchase. My heart still skips a beat whenever I see a white van on the road, even as an adult. I had no idea what those guys were up to or who they were. I'm not sure if I was chosen at random or if it was. I do know one thing, though, and it's more planned. I might not be here to share this experience if I had entered that van. It wasn't even intended for me to be searching for a place by myself quite yet. After graduation, my best friend Melissa and I had always intended to move in together, but her job offer was delayed, leaving me in a bind. I had to leave my parents' house before the start of the month, since I had just accepted a job as a veterinary technician in Brighton, which is roughly 2 hours away from where I grew up. It was an easy strategy, until Melissa joined me. Get something inexpensive and short-term, perhaps a 6-month lease. I didn't have much saved up, and Brighton rent wasn't exactly affordable for a 23-year-old who had just started a job. I ended up looking through Craigslist as a result. I discovered the advertisement late at night. The headline said, "Rent a room." The listing appeared safe enough, but it felt almost too wonderful to be true. A female roommate only, 225 months. The advertisement was brief. A 23-year-old nursing student is seeking a female roommate to live with her. A private bathroom and bedroom were among the amenities. Quiet place, no guys, no pets. Only the front of the house was shown in the one picture. Not scary, just a little dilapidated. The price was the most noticeable feature, to 25s in Brighton. Desperation 1. I sent a brief note in response to the advertisement. Hello, I'm Talia. I've accepted a job in the region and am in urgent need of a room to rent. Your home appears to be ideal. I'd love to visit and take a look. I don't smoke or own pets, and I'm quiet and considerate. Regards. 20 minutes later, she responded, or at least that's what I thought it was. Hey, can you stop over tomorrow night? I'm at work right now. Let's say it is about 8. I will be home at night because I work evenings. I'll text the address to you. Simply enter through the back entrance. The entrance door isn't working. Funny. No signature, no name. I told myself not to be paranoid. Though, it was most likely, I'm simply another busy student. Technicians and nurses have strange schedules, don't they? The following day was a drag. Melissa was instantly dubious when I told her about the location. She said, Craigslist, Talia, hurry up. That is the beginning of a horror film. I take it you're not going alone. I informed her, I'll text you the address, and I'll give you a call later. You have my last known location in case I disappear. She did not chuckle. Actually, neither did I. About 7:55 p.m. I arrived at the residence. It was farther out than I had anticipated, close to Brighton's outskirts, nearly rural, the sort of community where long grass and vacant lots separate each house. There were no street lights in the area, and the sky was just beginning to grow darker. The house was a little white-paned single-leaf affair with a rotting porch swing that moaned in the wind and a crooked mailbox. A handwritten letter with the words "door broken" was posted to the front door. Kindly return the use. I lingered there for too long. It didn't look right. The grass was knee-high. Every blind was drawn. Only one light, dimly flickering in what appeared to be the kitchen, was on. Despite my stomach's disapproval, I walked around to the rear out of desperation. A screen door was present, a container. I knocked. The door opened a few seconds later, but it wasn't a woman. In the doorway stood a man, unshaven, late 40s, with shoulder-length, stringy hair, wearing a rumpled denim shirt and ill-fitting pants. He appeared to have been sleeping on the streets. Hi, I said. I believe my house is incorrect. She had to work late, so I asked her to show me around. Come on in. I was searching for, I believe her name was. He cut me off. Nope. Right. House. I'm the landlord. She said you were coming, he said. Talia. Right. I froze. I hesitated. Something didn't feel right, but he grinned as if it didn't matter. He held the door open wider. The kitchen light behind him was yellowed and dim, creating long shadows. The kitchen smelled like damp rags and stale coffee, and there were no dishes or fridge magnets. I had only told Melissa my name. Yes, I said slowly. She mentioned it, and he answered too soon. Come on in. You'll adore the place. He led me into the hallway, saying, I try to keep it clean. Needs a little work, sure, but that's why rent's cheap. He showed me the bathroom first, which was vacant but tidy. There was nothing to imply that anyone actually lived there. There were no shampoos or toothbrushes, only a towel on the rack that appeared to be unused. And then the room that was meant to be available, which had a mattress on the floor, no bed frame, and one folding chair by the window. Where's her room? He indicated a closed door at the end of the hallway, which I assumed was the one. Oh, she's a private one. Doesn't like strangers in her space, I answered. Is it just you and her living here? Yeah, just me, he said hesitantly. Just her and me, really. Then he laughed, but it wasn't hilarious. Rather, it seemed like he was trying to hide something. I sensed my heart quicken, so I took a step back. I believe I've seen enough, thank you. I'll give it some thought and send her an email. But he interrupted me. Hold on. One more thing. The basement is the nicest part of the house. He walked over to a door at the end of the kitchen. It's finished. He unlocked the door, which swung forward, obstructing my passage to the back door. Ladies first, he murmured, gesturing into the black below. Well, basically finished. Could be a game room. Storage. Very roomy. Down. There were no lights on, and I couldn't even see the bottom, just stairs that went down into complete darkness. I grinned, because my boyfriend just texted me to say that he was waiting outside, and I hadn't anticipated his arrival. I had not even looked at my phone when he remarked, "I should go let him in," he said. Boyfriend. I swallowed. I thought you said you were living alone. Yeah, he likes to surprise me. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I stepped sideways, squeezing past him in the open door, slipping out the screen door with my back brushing the wall, and running, not walking, not looking back to my car, unlocked it, and drove it down the dirt driveway before I'd even put on my seatbelt. Melissa forced me to call the police, and I told her everything while we remained on the phone till 2 in the morning. I gave them my address, my emails, and the phone number from the text, and the next day, a detective called. He stated that the listing had been removed, but we checked the address and found that the house had been vacant for nearly 8 months. Foreclosure. No utilities, no tenant, and he hesitated to add that there was also no registered landlord. Whoever that individual was, I felt nauseous. What about inside? He doesn't own that place. Did you check the basement? I inquired. The line paused, then said, "A long one." We did, he said. It appears that someone has been staying there, he added softly. We discovered some magazines, trash, and blankets not exactly lawful. He cleared his throat, and there was a box with duct tape and belts connected to a stick. The steps were shin level with fishing string, which could trip someone in the dark. I remained silent, adding, "You were lucky. Don't go into strangers' houses anymore. Craigslist or not." I hang up. I had trembling hands. I never again used Craigslist to find a room. Additionally, I never enter a basement without the lights on. Somewhere out, there is a darker version of myself that was spared that fictitious call, who entered that basement first, and I find myself thinking about her more than I ought to. Oh, I was using Craigslist to try to sell a dining room set, not because I really needed the money. All I wanted was for it to be gone. I acquired the farmhouse after my mother passed away, along with a ton of outdated furniture that didn't fit anything I owned. The family has owned the dining table for many years. There were 6 chairs, a leaf extension, and solid oak. The wood still smelled somewhat of Sunday pot roasts and lemon polish. More than a year had passed since it was last used in the dining room. Although I described it as perhaps negotiable, I listed it at $1,200, which is fair given its quality. To demonstrate proportions, I included a few high-quality images and even one with a measuring stick. No real offers yet. Craigslist isn't exactly popular in rural regions like Marlow Creek, and the farmhouse was too far from the city centre. Weeks passed. I almost forgot the advertisement was up. Then I received a call. A little after 9:00 p.m., phone buzzed as I was half asleep on the couch and half watching a rerun of Forensic Files. No one knew the number. I wouldn't normally have responded so late, but I followed my gut. "Hello," I said. An excessively long period of silence was followed by a voice. Off, thin, raspy, male. "Do you still have the table?" He inquired. I took a seat. "Yes, I do. It's in excellent condition." One more pause. "Does it weigh a lot?" "Quite heavy." "Yes, solid oak. I'd want to attend. I have money." Tonight, are you home? Something was there about how he stressed that you're home tonight, which made my stomach turn. I told myself not to be paranoid, though. Perhaps he was nervous, but the man sounded older. The town was small. Individuals were peculiar. Yes, I replied. Marlow Creek is roughly 20 minutes south of me. Desire the address. He hung up without saying goodbye after he said, I know where that is. I'll be there in an hour. I walked to the dining room and straightened the centerpiece, wiped fingerprints off the chair backs, and gave everything a last cleaning. I continued to look at the time. An hour, he had been saying. However, the doorbell rang at precisely 9:16, only 17 minutes after the call. Through the frosted glass, a lengthy shadow was cast by the porch light. My entire body tightened as I opened the door. He was slender, as if he hadn't eaten in a week, and tall, perhaps 6'4". His neck and pits of his white undershirt were yellow-stained. His shoes, one brown and one black, didn't match, and his jeans were drooping and torn at the knee. His mustache appeared to have been soaked in tobacco spit, and his grey hair was wild and uneven. But I was struck by his eyes. They were darting, bloodshot, and had a wild quality. Evening, he murmured with the same unsteady voice. I was unwilling to let him in. I was torn between being courteous and being afraid, despite my instincts telling me not to. I moved aside as a result. The dining room's just through there, I said. He shuffled in slowly, as if examining a crime scene, without even saying thank you. He touched the wood with his fingers. He touched each chair's seat after running his hand under the table. He had long, yellowed nails as he examined. He made these tiny buzzing noises. It sounded like someone posing as human, but it wasn't. A whistle or a hum like a melody. I said this in an attempt to defuse the situation. I'm open to offers, but my asking price is $1,200. His face split open in a grin. He turned to face me, to many teeth bared, as if he had been waiting for me to say something. 500, he said. In fact, my laughter was more uncomfortable than humorous. That is far too low. Maybe I dropped to 1,000. The smile vanished in an instant. He made a tight line with his lips. He gazed, simply gazed. Then he began to grumble, to himself, not to me, like he was fighting to keep his skull together. His hands moved to his head and pressed into its sides. Then he mumbled as he paced back and forth. I was only able to grab fragments, constantly deceiving and lying. Again, the numbers are incorrect. You claimed that I froze. I retreated toward the front door and remarked, I think it's best if we call it a night. Thank you for coming out. He remained motionless. Nothing yet, sir. I made an effort to sound firmer. Please, it's late. After that, he reached inside his back pocket. A switch in my brain was flicked by something in that movement. With my heart hammering my ribs, I ran upstairs 2 at a time. I could hear I have nothing behind me. There was silence, no shouts, no footfall. I stored my .45 in my closet. After yanking it out of the case, I loaded it and squatted behind the door. Sweat had made my hands slippery. I peeked into the hallway through the crevice. Nothing. I glanced down the steps. Empty. I called the cops, shut the door, and slipped back toward my room. Everything was whispered. They warned me to hide because a car was approaching. Behind my bed, I waited. My chest was being punctured by my heart. Minutes passed, followed by sirens. I remained motionless. Not until I heard conversations and then boots on the hardwood. Officers, if you're here, call out. I shouted as I stepped outside with my hands up. They swiftly located me. I gave them my ID and went over everything one more. They made me go outside. 2 officers swept the house while I stood barefoot in the driveway, still holding the rifle. They came out after 5 minutes. They weren't alone, either. The man was handcuffed by them. He simply moved between them like a doll without arguing or saying anything. The cop appeared shaken. He said, He was hiding in your pantry, while brandishing a loaded handgun. I was unable to talk. The man was placed in the cruiser's rear. He turned and peered at me through the window as the automobile drew away. That appearance, when I close my eyes, I can still see it. Hatred, malice, as if I had sabotaged some devious scheme of his, as if he could recall every single aspect of my voice, my house, and my face. That evening, I replaced the locks, and the next day, I purchased a security system. I no longer respond to messages on Craigslist. I'm thinking about selling the farmhouse and moving out of Marlow Creek completely, but I'm confident that he'll be out eventually, regardless of how far I go. And I will always remember that expression.